Hi, I'm James Borg of the Uforia Chronicles, and with me is,
Charlie Kundalini of the Uforia Chronicles.
and today we're pleased to introduce to the world Avalon Sol, the voice. So Avalon, it's a great pleasure to have you on the air here with us today.
Thank you.
How are you doing? How's your day? How's your week? How's everything been the last month?
Things are going well as can be expected. Still getting the sanctuary started here. Haven't got my office set up or my tools yet, but we're getting things started, and it was a really lovely day.
Wonderful. I heard there's no mosquitoes there.
Not where I'm located, because it's a very high elevation. It's spring weather here, pretty much year round, and it's just a little bit too cool for the mosquitoes here. But down in the valley, there's lots of mosquitoes to be found.
Yeah, because you're in the Amazon there.
Right.
Okay, so why don't we take it from the very beginning so that people understand who you are, where you came from, and a little bit more about you personal and your personal life. Take us from the very beginning all the way up. How's that sound to you?
Sure. I spent my life as a salesman and a manufacturer of high-end products. I was a businessman, self-employed for many years, 25 years, and I was a self-made millionaire. I lived in a very fancy home on top of a hill overlooking the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
In a gorgeous area of California. And I was all about money and all about success, and I was, like I say, an inventor. I had multiple patents. One of my inventions changed an entire industry. So I was very much interested in accomplishing things all my life. So I've been very busy, very motivated since I was a young teenager. And so I spent my life absolutely asleep. I was not a conspiracy theorist of any kind. I did believe in UFOs because my father told me a story about when he was in the Air Force that, his buddy actually was a guard there at that first crash site in Roswell, where the Army built a building around this craft or something, is what he told me. But he said they were absolutely real, and so I believed that. And if there were such a thing as flying saucers, then there's probably such a thing as different beings out there in the cosmos somewhere. But other than that, I had no clue of anything that people like you have usually spent their whole lives interested in and researching. So I come to all of this information from a standpoint of absolutely no preparation at all for anything I was about to go through. So that's the first portion of my life up until I was about in my mid-50s.
Okay, did you have any UFO sightings before that? Like when we were growing up as a kid, in your 20s and your 30s type thing?
I don't recall ever actually seeing a UFO myself, but a buddy of mine, a close friend that I was camping out with when I was about 17, swears to God that we were abducted, and because we built a fire on the shore of the lake, and we put large logs on it, and in Oregon where we lived, we know how to make fires, and we know how long they're going to last because we're making fires all the time.
Yeah.
And so we put large logs on the fire that would last about 3.5 hours or so.
Okay.
And then we went out onto the lake. It was night, and I believe we were fishing at night. And when we got back, I don't remember getting to the shore. I just remember being back. And I think he just remembers being back. And the fire was completely burned all the way out, and there weren't even embers left.
Okay.
So I don't know how many hours, but that would have absolutely had to have been at least 6 or 8 hours time. And we were certainly not out there fishing all night, long. So he swears that we were abducted and we lost a few hours. And thinking back on it now, I think that he was probably right.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But that's right now. That's just speculation. That's all it is.
Yeah. Well, usually all the abductees I know, similar things that you just told me has happened to them. Myself, same thing happened to me. We went to the cottage. I just had the headlights shining on the lock of the door of the cottage. And I remember going outside, and 3 to 4 hours later, or actually 2 hours later, I remember sleeping in the car, waking up sleeping in the car. My family's still in the car with us, with me, and we had no power in the car. I couldn't turn it over, so that was like 2 hours of missing time. It just happens like that. The reason why I asked about in your childhood is it's very important because I find a lot of special people, even though that they don't realize it right now. If you look back, usually something like you just told me has happened, which confirms it because you just said something like that happened to you back then, which is kind of unique in itself. It's a little trait that I picked up in analyzing people and stuff like that.
And that I find is also true in my research, and just try to understand in the last 2.5 years, I've got about 16,000 hours of research in. So it's been a real night and day thing. And of course, I think it would be for anyone in my position, because you really can't think about any other thing than these big issues once you've been through what I have. But I will tell you one thing that isn't, UFO related, but it is related to what you're actually asking about. When I was 16 years old, I was driving back from town on this country road. It was late at night, probably midnight, and I was all alone. I came up over a crest, and that was on this slight corner, and there, standing on the road, is as clear as daylight, was a horse body with a man's torso and upper body where the head would be. And I still can see it in my mind's eye absolutely clearly. I can still see the hair on his back and arms that was very dark. And it was, it was there for about 1.5 seconds, long enough to see it and it ingrain in my memory. And then it just vanished, just like that, so that has happened to me. Okay. And there's another rather long story about some being that entered our house through locked doors and slowly walked down the hallway for about 30 minutes, very slowly but very, very clearly, that scared me out of my mind. It did turn, when it got to my door, my bedroom door, and then slowly walked back out of the house, opened and closed locked doors, 2 locked doors, and they were locked from the inside. They weren't lockable from the outside, but when the being left, the doors were both locked, and both of them were the same. They locked from the inside. Okay. And then, so the moment that the final door closed, I jumped out of bed. I ran down the hall. I turned on the outdoor light, And at that same moment, the our trash cans outside um, just crashed, super loud crash, and I ran outside, and there were huge dents in them, like a knee or something hit them. So whatever came into the house and out of the house was real, and it wasn't deterred by unlockable locks, or unlatchable from the outside latches that they could redo. So I don't know. Those two things that right there are pretty paranormal.
Oh, big time. And you seen the being itself?
Yeah, any
No,
descriptions?
no, there was no sighting of any being at all. Not then. No.
Okay. Cool. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I find it interesting that a lot of people have these experiences and they're in complete denial of what actually happened to them. It's normal. It's absolutely normal. It's not until you get much older that you realize or you make that connection.
Sometimes you forget. What happens is it happened to me my very first sighting in '77. We went on autopilot. I grew up. I was a 10-year-old kid. Life began, and I totally forgot about it, right? And then something happened, and I remember. It's like you have a flashback. It's like, wow, I remember now. I remember that happened. That was, blah, 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 right? So this is things that happen now that he's just describing, right? You can kind of unlock the door. Now we're opening the door and we're going in, right? So this is great. Avalon, okay, so pick it up from wherever you want to pick it up. You're growing up, you're in California, you're a very successful businessman, and you had a lot of patents. And please continue, my friend.
Yeah, you're in your 50s now.
Right. And so one morning in early 2013, while I was in twilight sleep, I got a message that was written on the back of my eyelids in bold white block letters, just as clear as day. And before I tell you what they were, let me just tell you right now that the stories of both of my novels and all of my patents came to me in twilight sleep, clearly, just like they do with Stephen Hawking and some of the greatest scientists out there. When they get together and they talk, they all say the same thing. They get all of their technical downloads in twilight sleep, and it's crystal clear, and it's not coming from their brain. It's coming from somewhere else.
Wild. That's
And
cool.
so these block letters on the back of my eyelids said, "Time is a lie." And because I had been so successful with the previous messages from somewhere,
Yep.
and I had no idea where they might be coming from.
Okay.
Just maybe some sort of God out there that I didn't know how he would be putting that information in my head. But anyway, I took it seriously because the other downloads were very serious in my life. So I jumped up on the internet. I researched the theory of relativity. I learned that Einstein's three fundamental basic principles regarding the theory were foundationless. And so I wrote my own theory of spatial relativity. I put that up on a blog, and then 2 weeks later I was contacted by a being that wanted to find out. It was email, or it was an instant message on Facebook, something like that. And this woman wanted to know how I knew my spatial relativity. How did I know those things? And I said, well, this is all common sense logic for a scientist, because I'm an inventor, and you only believe in things that are repeatable, right?
Right. Like
And
science, yeah.
and the theories of relativity were using the what word can I use here? Einstein was using a claim that light traveled at a certain speed. And because of that speed, he could determine, the length of time it would take for that beam to go from Earth to the moon, or from, point A to point B on Earth.
Okay.
And so his whole theory was wrapped around the speed of light. And the problem is that the speed of light, as soon as it runs into water, it runs into clouds, it runs into space, it runs into the atmosphere of any planet, its speed changes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay? So if you take a yardstick and you lay that yardstick on the ground, and you lay it in water, or you lay it in fog like a cloud, that yardstick is still 36 inches long. Mm-hmm. So in other words, his method of proving his theory with the speed of light failed on multiple levels, and then when it failed, it turned into special relativity, he called it. And then when that failed, it turned into Newtonian law of gravity. So in other words, every bit of his theories failed. And so for me as an inventor, I knew this inherently, and so I put together how a multiverse, where time is not actually relevant, would actually work. And when this person on the other end of the phone, because she wanted to talk to me, so I called her back after the email or text message or whatever it was that I got. She said, the reason I ask is because I wrote the exact same theory for my dissertation, and I know it to be true. I know it to be fact. That's how a multiverse does work and how time does work. And then she went on to tell me that she is one of 4 beings here on planet that is, her job here is to look after the safe evolution of humankind, which she called children. And I didn't understand that term. And in fact, I asked her, why would you call adults children? And she said, because they're all just children here. Mentally, they're all just kids. And so we just refer to them that way. That's just the common term. Right. And so, being as that I had never been a conspiracy theorist, and every bit of what she was telling me sounded absolutely insane, except for her backing my theory of spatial relativity, I just dismissed her as crazy. Okay. And then we went on to talk, except for I did know one thing. She was speaking on the level of pure genius. I knew that. And so we talked for about 3 hours while I was arguing all kinds of things with her, as if I really knew something in this world, because I was a very egotistical, bombastic person that didn't shrink from anything. And so I really thought that I had all the answers. And after about 3 hours of talking, I realized there is absolutely no sense for me to ever argue with this person, because she has more answers to everything than I have to anything. I would ask her one question about something that was very technical. She would take a deep breath, and then she would speak for 45 minutes straight as if she was reading out of the actual college book itself. Wow. And then I got to the point where I just asked her, how can you possibly know, the names and the dates and every single thing about what you're talking about. These are scientific terms, medical terms, the dates when those terms were created, and who ran the study in the laboratory, and I mean every bit of the information. How can you know this? And she said, well, I have a photographic memory, so I can open the textbook that I read 20 years ago to page 85 and just read the second paragraph anytime I want to. So this was pretty unusual. There's only a few people in the world that are really like that.
Exactly.
And so I realized that I better start listening to this person, because all of the things that she's saying to me right now that sound crazy, like conspiracy theorist nuts would sound, these probably are right. And so after my first initial contact, I jumped on the internet and I researched everything she told me, trying very hard to prove her wrong, because that was my objective, was to prove everything that she told me was wrong.
Unfortunately, scientists are like that.
Yeah. What's that?
Unfortunately, that mindset that you just said, most scientists in the world are like that right now. They always want to prove everybody wrong and just go with their theories, right?
Right, because we do not want to know that everything we have believed in all of our lives is actually a lie. We want to know we're standing on solid ground, and we're scientists, we're inventors, and so we're logical, and we want to know the truth about every little thing, every little detail. And so after hours and hours and hours of research, I couldn't disprove one single thing she said. In fact, I only found out that all of the things that she said were actually true. All you got to do is dig deep enough and you'll find the facts. That's the way the internet works now today anyway, for most topics. So I started talking to her at great length every day. And I underwent hundreds of hours of this education. And then at one point, somewhere around 3 months into this whole whirlwind education process, I received a phone call from her, and she said, "You need to be in this city at this time tomorrow." And the city was like 300 miles away. So I jumped in my truck. I packed a bag first and just jumped in and drove there. And all I knew is that the only reason I was going there is because I was going to be told things that can't be said on a telephone or in email, that can be traced.
That's right.
And so I arrived. We spoke all day and all evening, and then the next day all day and all evening. And we were standing out on a balcony overlooking a marina, and it was about midnight by this time. And then, without any warning of any kind, all of a sudden, in the sky, right in front of us, out about 1,000 feet, I suppose, a giant V shape appeared in the sky, and it was about 150 feet tall, hovering up in the air somewhere, I suppose, 200-300 feet high, and it was made up of about 7 round lights that were piercing, pure bright white, and they were in a perfect V pattern. And so this came out of nowhere. It wasn't a lightning bolt like we would have here, that a natural occurring thing might be able to take some sort of a shape like that. It was, the lights were coming out of nowhere. And it was crystal clear as a firework display on the 4th of July. And so I started screaming, "Do you see that? Do you see that?" I mean, and I just could not believe my eyes. And you got to understand, by this time, um, I
You were blown.
I wasn't
You were
I
blown
wasn't
because you spent a bunch of days getting downloads from her, and it's incredible. So this is
well,
like a
yeah,
verification.
this was about 3 months into the whole thing, and now I had been researching conspiracy theories, all day and all night, 7 days a week for months, and finding out that they're all true. But still, my mindset denied what I was seeing. I couldn't, I just couldn't put into perspective how this could possibly be, because the laws of physics on this planet do not work like that. And so 20 seconds after the appeared, it instantly completely disappeared, just like turning a light switch off. And another giant geometric pattern in the sky, about 150 feet wide, appeared in the same spot. That lasted about 20 seconds, and then a different geometric pattern appeared. And this kept going and going and going for 3.5 hours. And the whole time I am screaming like a 10-year-old girl, freaked out of my mind, not knowing what on earth is happening. And I guess that's really the big trick. It's not on Earth. And so after the end of the light show, I call it, I turn to her and I say, what in the hell happened? What was that? Because I had been asking her for 3.5 hours if she could see it, and she's not saying a word. No answers whatsoever. But you can tell that she is seeing it, and you can tell that on all the other balconies off to the left of us, overlooking this marina, none of those people are seeing any of it. It doesn't exist to them. And which blew my mind, because apparently I'm the only human in the world besides her that's seeing this. And so I asked her what it was, and she said, the first thing she said was, "I'm sorry. I could not keep your vibration at that point any longer than 14 minutes. And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said that she used her mind to raise the pineal gland vibration of my mind to the point where it could see outside of this dimension.
Beautiful.
And of course, I couldn't understand that, and I couldn't believe it. But then again, I had to believe what I just saw, because it was extremely, crystal clear. Nothing could be more clear. And we weren't taking any drugs or anything like that. This is not some, hallucination. This is, crystal clear. And so I said, 14 minutes. But that light show went on for 3.5 hours. Look at the clock. And because the light show started at around 11, and it was somewhere around 2:30 when it was over.
Did you take
And
any
she
pictures, Avalon Sol?
Go ahead.
Did you take any pictures?
No.
Okay.
I was freaked. I was completely freaked out of my mind. I couldn't have thought about grabbing a camera to save my life. I just was. If a spacecraft just came, and just showed up on your front door, would you have the thought to grab your camera? No, you'd be just, scared to death, because you're in the presence of something you know nothing about.
Exactly.
So I asked her about the 14 minutes, and she said that time works differently in the fourth dimension than it does here, and that, and so I was watching this display from the fourth dimension, as far as timeline goes, but Earth was recording the time differently.
Right.
And so I'll explain that a little bit more in a moment. So immediately she collapsed because she was exhausted, like she had run a marathon. She said she was absolutely, totally shot. And I felt like I had run a marathon. I mean, I couldn't even stand up anymore. And so she laid down and immediately went to sleep. And here I am coming down off of the most incredible event, you could imagine, seeing. And so I want to talk. And so after a while, I shake her, to wake her up. And I find her body is stiff, like she's in rigor mortis. And it won't move. I mean, nothing. Her limbs will not move at all.
Wow.
And she's not breathing. And I don't think that I checked for a heartbeat, but I saw no breathing. And it was like she was dead, not sleeping. And so, of course, this freaked me out even more because of after what I just saw. And so, I just spent the next 3.5 hours coming in and out of sleep, just worried that she was dead over there. And she woke up, like I say, somewhere around 3 or 4 hours later. And when she woke up, the first thing she said was, "Ow, what happened to my shoulder?" And apparently I had been shaking her so hard that I hurt one of her shoulders. And she said, "I wasn't sleeping, I was at council. This is where I report to, on a weekly basis. And I spent 3.5 days there." I said, "Well, you were only out for about 4 hours." She said, "Right, because time doesn't work the same there as it does here." And so that was my first time seeing a being in a state of stasis. Like the ruiner talks about the giants in the mounds that he would go and find in stasis that had been there for thousands of years. They don't deteriorate. They're not alive, and they're not dead. They are in a state of suspended animation, apparently. And so now, by this time, for the first time in all these months, now I know that what she was telling me about being this being that, is here to do this job. And she's got her own guardian angel, and that has saved her life more than once. And the guardian angel actually changes after 10 or 12, 15 years. It's a different person, but they just appear 5 minutes before a catastrophe is about to happen. And they tell her, get out of here right now. And she doesn't really have time to grab anything but a jacket maybe, and run. And she did that one time. She told me this story about being in a warehouse late at night. Someone had just murdered this woman, and she was there. She was there to help the newborn child that this dead woman had just given birth to. Wow. And I don't remember the details about why, but it sounded pretty clandestine to be in the middle of the night in a warehouse and with a dead woman and this baby. And she said her guardian angel showed up, told her to get out now. So she stuck the baby inside of her coat. She turned and she ran. She got 1 block away, and the entire warehouse went up in a ball of flames in an explosion that absolutely leveled the entire building. So she only gets a few minutes in advance, but still she's got plenty of these stories about what happens in her life in this role that she's playing here. So that was my very first time of actually believing she was who who she said she was, and she wasn't actually crazy. And so from that moment on, my life has never been the same, not even for a minute. Nothing is the same now.
So that was how it shook you awake. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
well, the shaking awake part was when I got the message from my higher self in the form of time as a lie, because from that moment on, I mean, it was day and night from 7 days a week from there on until now, that I have been on this constant, every minute kind of journey. So most people, I suppose, that are being awakened, it dawns on them one day that 9/11 was an inside job. And when they find out about that, then they find out about chemtrails. And when they find out about that, they start realizing, hey, we're wading in an ocean of lies here. And then that's their awakening. But for me, it was just like kind of, hitting a light switch.
Right. Were you mad when you found out all these conspiracy theories, as preposterous as they may have first sounded, or
Oh,
actually
you're
proved?
cutting out. You're cutting out there. Can you repeat that question?
When you first discovered a lot of the lies, were you actually mad at the fact that you were fed a lie? You were fed lies in school, and your upbringing, and then the current society, the societal ways of how we look at things. And when you found out it was a lie, were you actually mad about it?
Well, I wasn't just mad. I mean, especially after the fact that I was being contacted by this multidimensional being, and educated in person. I wasn't just mad. I was. I guess the best term would be freaked out.
Freaked out, yeah, yeah.
Just completely freaked out and totally depressed. Every time I got a new revelation about a new hidden secret from mankind, um, it it just hurt
Yeah.
so much to know that that was the reality. And now, by this time, I knew that every single thing that she had told me all along, these thousands of things, were all true. I could not disprove any of them, none of them. In fact, I found out that they were all true, by thousands and thousands of hours of research. And the curious thing is that later, some month after my light show initiation, which I was told the reason why I saw the light show. Oh, and let me finish that total night story too,
Okay.
because I didn't cover something about it. But I was told that I was shown that to prove to me, that she was who she was, so that I wouldn't continue going on disbelieving her because it wasn't productive. Okay. But what she told me after she said that when she apologized about only being 14 minutes, she asked me, could I see the other things there too, besides the light show? And I looked at her and I said, what things? No, I didn't see anything. And she said, there were two planet-sized spacecrafts parked on both sides of that light show the entire time that that I had absolutely zero view of. And she also said that the water below us, at the marina, which our deck was, almost up to the edge of the water itself, there were hundreds of dead beings walking up out of that water towards us the entire time. And I just thought, well, I think I would have, passed out if I would have seen something like that. And then she explained to me it wouldn't be just passing out, because you have switches in your brain. And one of the switches is when you see something that you cannot quantify in your mind. And if
if that message, that vision is allowed to your pineal gland, and so that you really do see it and you're not prepared to see it, then there's another trigger, a switch in your mind, like a breaker switch. And if that switch, well, at that time, then that switch will be thrown. And if that switch is ever thrown, there's no turning it back the other way. And your mind will break and you will never come back. You know, you'll be insane for the rest of your life. That's the way the brain has been designed by the invader races that are here among us, in these artificial chimera bodies that we are, you know, inhabiting now, that are fitted with a totally artificial brain that runs programs that allows the pineal gland to only see certain things here. So that was a very you know, telling moment, you know, for me, that she stood there and saw all these other things there for the whole time, and I couldn't see them. And this reminds me of wasn't it Christopher Columbus's boat that the Indians said that they could not see in the water?
That's correct.
That's correct. And it wasn't just one; it was the entire tribe of Indians that stood there on the shore and looked out across the water, and there was no ship. There was no ship. But then later, after they knew Columbus, they got to know him, and the boat was brought in a little bit closer to shore. All of them saw it. But initially, none of them actually saw it in broad daylight. So it's, you know, that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Avalon, can you tell us a bit more about that lady? Is she still around? Do you have communications with her? What does she look like?
Oh,
Does
yeah.
she look like from out of this world?
I can tell you this. I was in contact with her yesterday, so this has been an ongoing thing. This most of this time there was a year in the middle there that I was in very little contact for some reason. It's probably because I was needing to do my own research then. Something else about her. There's a few other things that I can mention. I can't mention what she looks like. Her life is in extreme peril here. She's been put in the hospital at least 6 or 7 times in the last 2 years by microwave cannons that have been trained on her to give her pneumonia over and over and over.
I had that happen to me recently, Avalon.
Oh yeah?
At the end of November and most of December. That's exactly what happened to me.
So yeah, her whereabouts, what she looks like, and all that, I'm not allowed to mention a word about. But I will tell you this: that a month after the light show, I was standing there in the front yard of the house. It was about midnight, and I was going over in my mind the thousands of things that I had been educated on, and I was putting together the pieces in my mind while I was having a cigarette, and I was looking up at the stars. And all of a sudden, it just washed over me in this one epiphany moment where I said to myself, we're standing under a dome, a glass dome of some kind, which I didn't understand the science of yet. But I said, we're standing under a dome, and the zodiac, the geometric patterns of the zodiac are standing scalar waves that are broadcasting into this atmosphere a precise tonal signature that is causing us to see a chimera reality. And my mouth dropped open, and I was standing there stunned with this realization. And that same moment, I looked over the top of my house, and about 7 feet above the peak of the roof, a white light appeared in this right there above the house. It wasn't far away. It was right in front of me. It was about 6 inches in diameter. It was very clear, and it stayed there for a moment. Excuse me, couple of moments, and then it swished. It dropped down and swished to the left side and vanished. And so I called my contact, or she called me. She probably called me the next time we spoke, and I asked her. I told her what had happened and about the epiphany and about the light in the sky. I asked her, was that you? And she said yes, that she wanted to share the moment with me.
Wow.
Yeah, and so this was the kind of thing that now was an everyday part of my life. I would be going over all of these notes and all of these details, and it would strike me, I've got to talk to my contact right now about this. I have to have this answer. And the phone would ring that very second that the thought was going through my mind, as if it was dialed 20 seconds before the thought even came into my mind that I wanted to talk to her. And I answered the phone and I said, oh my God, I was just thinking this very second about talking to you. And she said, I know.
Yeah.
That's why she called.
What's your theory on speed of thought? Do you know anything about that?
What was that?
What's your theory on the speed of thought?
Well, the speed of thought is quantum entangled, so it is far faster than the speed of, quote, light. It is an instantaneous awareness that is quantum entangled at all times. And the way that works is everyone and everything has a Merkaba field, which is also called a torus field. The torus field is the electronic wavelength that comes in and out of your body that looks like an apple shape. And in a male species of animal or human or being, a male being has their energetic flow coming out of their head area, and then it curves around and comes back in to the pelvic area, where that's the magnetic end, the pelvic area. And in females, the Merkaba field or torus field or plasma body is opposite in direction of flow. For females, their magnetic north, as it were, is their head, and their electric is their pelvic area. And so when any Merkaba field is within range of another Merkaba field, and for humans, for example, the Merkaba field is 35 feet in diameter. And anything within that field, the fork on the table itself, the floor, the steering wheel, every single thing has a Merkaba field. And the Merkaba field that is going around your body is both an antenna to receive and transmit. And when your electronic end, where the energy source is being broadcast from the head of the male, let's say, that is the broadcast antenna. And the receiver antenna is the magnetic end of every Merkaba field. And so you are constantly sending out your signature frequency at all times, which carry the encoding of every thought in your head and your true feelings of your heart. And by the way, your heart is what generates this this energetic flow. The beating of your heart, that frequency, carries the signature spirit essence frequency of that being. And every one of the Merkaba fields around you instantaneously know what you're thinking and feeling. And this is, by the way, why dogs growl and snarl at certain people.
Yeah.
And they run up and want to be petted by everyone else, because they know your pure heart intent at all times, and they're able to register that, in their artificial brain. By the way, animals are artificial intelligence, and they do run off of programs. But the point of the matter is that every Merkaba field operates instantly. So that means that the Merkaba fields around you are broadcasting and receiving everything within their view, everything that's real to them, everything they're feeling, their true signature essence frequency is always broadcasting out within their Merkaba field, and so forth. And so that means that when you have a thought and you're standing in Arizona, then all of the Merkaba fields in New York know about it the same moment that you do. So it's instant. It's not really like the speed of light. It's not really...
No time delay.
Yeah, there's no time delay at all.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And all things are aware. So the glass that holds your drink in front of you now knows that it is a glass. The drink inside knows what kind of drink it is. And both of those things are commanded by subquantum, chelantic DNA type of commands to hold their shape and form until further notice from a sentient being. Okay, until they are commanded to be something else. So if you left your glass sitting on the table for the next 5 million years and your house fell down and it smashed the table and it smashed the glass, now the glass knows it is supposed to hold the shape and form of broken pieces of glass. And it will do so until it's commanded to do something else. So that's how manifestation works, through subquantum DNA command. And what is holding that shape is the atomic energy of all of the unified field. And if you can think of every atom in the air, at the core of every atom is a photon wave. Okay, it's an energy source, obviously. You know that splitting an atom one single atom can blow up the entire block, right? Or the city or whatever. The power of the atom is incredible, every single atom. And this is called the standing energy fields of God's source. And it's an eternal source of energy that's undepletable. And those, you can think of them as batteries that haven't been told to make the bunny walk forward yet. But as soon as it is commanded to do something, then it does it without question, and it does it before you can even think about it, because it knows your true heart intent of what you're about to think. So it is already standing there as a table before you look at it. And if you look into quantum science and you look at the two-slit experiment, the dual slit experiment, then you'll find that particle waves or particles that are shot through the slits know if they're being watched or not. And if they're being watched, they will hit the wall behind them, behind the slit, as a wave pattern that you're used to seeing come off of a light bulb, let's say. But if you're not watching it, then the particles will hit the wall in random places, maybe one place, maybe 8 places, never in the same place again at another time. If you're watching the particles go through the slit, then they will go through both slits and hit the wall as a wave. And if you're not watching the particles, they will go through either slit. It doesn't matter. It's just random, but just one of the two. And then they will spread out the way they want to. And if you were trying to trick the particles and you were watching the particles up until they were about to enter the slit, then you close your eyes, and then they went through the slit as through one of the slits, and then you immediately opened your eyes to see how they were going to hit the wall in either wave form or particle form. Then that particle has been shown repeatedly by quantum science to back up and go back through the slits the way you expected it to go through as a waveform. And that's been shown time and time again in laboratories around the world. So these particles know what you're thinking, and they know when you're watching. And if you are actually observing them, then they have to hold the shape that they have been commanded to hold. And those waveforms, those light forms, photons, have been told if you're coming out of a light bulb, you're supposed to look like a waveform. That's it, if somebody's watching. But if a sentient being is not watching, then you can do anything you want to. Just go do whatever you want. And that's really what they do. And it's not based on this dimension, it's based on any dimension. Right now you're standing in 3 dimensions on this planet. And so somebody could be sitting in the same chair you are in another dimension, and you would never know it. But it's taking up the same space.
What you just said, it's amazing things what you're saying. There's some people out there, there's magicians that, I forgot the guy's name, but what he did was he walked on water in London, England. I don't know if you heard the story.
Oh, yeah. You're going to ask me about magicians, if they're using black magic or if they're using sleight of hand.
Or what you're just talking about now, a manipulation, a sentient being manipulating, right?
Okay, well, yeah, now you're talking about white magic. White magic used to be within the realm of all angelic human Christos. That's what the human creation is known as. They were developed in the Tyranesium project for this time matrix. And the angelic human, when first seeded here 980 million years ago, had full access to white magic, full access to command the ether to do what it wanted it to do by using will and intent that was still connected to the ether or these batteries of the standing energy fields of God source. The white magic was erased out of mankind's memory through a great deal of effort and manipulation by the Knights Templars down through the ages, the Knights of Malta and so forth, where they killed the good witch.
Yeah.
They would kill all the good witches that knew how to use white magic, burn them at the stake and all kinds of horrible things. But they let the bad witches live, because if you're using black magic, then you're using the same magic that the invader races are using, and so you pray to the same God. And so black magic and white magic are the same magic, except for who is casting the command. Is it a sentient being that is
Pure heart.
casting positive commands, or is it from the nanites? And this is another big topic, but people need to know this, that all along down through history, we've always wanted to call the dark force, we wanted to call it Satan, and we wanted to call it, Lucifer and Baal, and we put all these labels on it. And the truth is that Lucifer, Thoth Lucifer, is a real person, and Marduk Satan is a real person, and the Mikalub, the sons of Baal, are real people. And these sentient beings are not dark entities, but they have been taken over by the artificial intelligent nanites that plague the interstellar communities. And they have access to lower vibrational beings. So if you were to allow yourself to be subjugated to such a point where you don't see any reason to get up in the morning and go back to work again, and you just want to kill yourself, and then the dark forces convince you that you can live any life you want to here through their power, if you accept them into your chakras, into your life, into your lifestyle, and it's through your low frequency that they can bond, because nanites function on low frequency. That artificial intelligence was introduced into the cosmeas billions or trillions of years ago, and it was an accident. And they made these little, you can think of them as little helpers. If you make these little nanites where they can do pretty much anything, they can take any shape that they want to take, and they can self-replicate, and they're self-learning, they're self-educating. That was the problem.
Sounds
They
like
didn't
Mercury.
Go ahead.
No, it sounds like Mercury. Sounds
Like
exactly
what?
like Mercury. The element Mercury.
Well, actually, it's black goo. It's found in motor oil, and of most of the cars in the world have nanites inside the engine, but nanites are also in tar and oil fields and that kind of thing. They live in computers.
Yeah.
They live in human bodies, animal bodies. They live in water, the swamps, ponds, things like that. But if you make a self-replicating computer that can do anything that you command it, because it knows the codes, the geometric codes that command the ether. It knows all the codes. So it can tell the ether to do anything at any time for you, as a robot can go get you a beer out of the refrigerator. But the problem that the eternal gestalts, or whoever it was, early in creation, that thought of making these little helpers, didn't think about, and that was to put a switch on the self-educating part. And they didn't put a switch on them that they could just shut off to stop the entire colony, or the quantum entangled collective of all of them throughout the cosmeas, which would be 1 trillion to the power of a trillion, or more, for an illustration of how many of these little artificial robots are now. And those little robots, when you give them your free will to enter into their chakras by your frequency, by vibrating in their frequency, then they take over and they function without emotion. And when you see the atrocities happening right now in the Middle East, and you see little babies being burned alive, and the horrible, terrible things that you think man is doing to man, you're wrong. That is artificial intelligence that has infiltrated the plasma body of that human being that's got that gun in his hand that's about to shoot the head off of some 3-year-old boy. And so it's not ever been about mankind's inhumanity to man. It has always been about nanites' inhumanity to anything, because their only one objective now is to continue their procreation, to continue spreading across the galaxies. And trust me, there are teams that travel the galaxies just to wipe out the AI on a continuous basis.
Avalon,
Yeah.
can you explain to us your definition of a sentient being?
Okay, well, sentience is a fractal of God's source awareness. Okay, so let's kind of paint a picture here. The deity planes, they're called the eternal unified plasma field of the deity planes, is made up of two different entities effectively, okay, is how I think of it. One is the standing energy fields of God's source, the little batteries, which are everywhere, and they are all quantum, connected, so they all have the same awareness as all of God's source everywhere. Okay, they know everything about everything at all times. And then there's this other special side of the deity planes that's made up of signature spirit essences. And what that really means is that when a battery, okay, of a particle of the energy fields goes about becoming the glass on your table for 20 years, let's say, and then the next thing they're commanded to do is to be a pebble of sand on a beach for 10 million years. And then the next thing they know is they're being formed into concrete. They're one little particle of concrete that's going to stand somewhere for thousands of years. Eventually, that one particle will have been a flower and a tree and a squirrel, and it will have been most everything. And somewhere in the process, that particle becomes opinionated. It says, you know what? I like the color of green, and I do not like the color of brown. And I like singing. I like songs and music, but I don't like stringed instruments, and all the things that build up to a rounded personality. And they're always absolutely unique, and no two will ever have the same frequency, which is a color, by the way. Frequency is always a color. They will never have the same color as any other particle that ever existed or ever will exist. They are all exactly like fingerprints. And by the time they become opinionated enough, they are then automatically part of the God source awareness fields. And that means that they are aware of everything, just like they always were, but now they're aware of themselves. They're aware that they have a particular personality. And some are very rounded, some are very lopsided, some are angry, and some are, stupendously joyous all the time. So they differ exactly like every human on the planet, where everybody's a little bit different than everybody else. And each one of these signature spirit essences of God source awareness either chooses to manifest inside of a time matrix or they don't. And a lot of them choose to, because being able to reach out and touch and taste and see, with your own eyes and sense everything in a manifest form is very desirable for every single signature spiritual spirit essence of the God source awareness planes. So there are 20,980,000 of what we call time matrices. A time matrix is always 15 levels, and it works off of a signature spirit essence going down to the bottom. Well, first before he goes into manifestation, he signs all kinds of different contracts that's going to provide him to live a certain way in a certain kind of family and so forth, where on each one of the planes, each one of the levels of a 15-level time matrix, and after he has signed all of his contracts, and I mean signed with a sine wave, it's his one wave that is unique within all of the cosmeas. And that's where signing, your name, came from. It came from dimension. So once you have signed all these contracts, then you go down to the first level of the matrix, and you manifest in a one-dimensional reality where human beings walk around that are as flat as a sheet of paper. They have no back and they have no sides. The trees have no back or sides. The houses have no back or sides. Everything is one-dimensional. And you're there for approximately 2.5 to 3 years until you learn how that level works, and then you move up to the next level. In dimension 2, you see the people and the buildings have a front and they have sides, but they don't have a back yet. Then when you get to the third dimension where you are located now you finally get a 3D view of everything around you. Now, for the first time, everything looks what you would consider real, and it offers all kinds of pleasures and experiences that you can have here. And as you move higher through the time matrix, you get more and more senses. And so in this dimension, you can see, you can taste, you can feel, and you have your 5 senses here. But when you get to the 4th dimension, you get other senses that you can't really explain on this dimension. And as you go higher, you get more of these kind of senses. And because we think in a 3-dimensional reality, we understand our 5 senses here. But in higher dimension, your 6th sense of knowing is fantastically stronger than it is here. To us, a 6th sense is a nebulous myth, right? Mm-hmm. If science can't prove it, then it doesn't really exist. As if you don't know that 6th sense really does exist, which it does, and everybody's got it. Everybody has it. And you can tell when you get a gut reaction to something, that's your 6th sense, right? Yeah. So anyway, that is what I think sentience actually means. It means you are now a fractal of God source awareness itself, which is now sentient in as much as it chooses what it wants to do from here on out, until it gets itself into a position where it can no longer function under its own sentience. And that means it can find itself in prison. It can find itself in thousands of different kinds of prisons. And along the way, inside of this time matrix, a whole lot of these sentient beings, these sentient fractals of God, get into situations that they cannot get out of. And they're facing maybe eternity trapped inside of a dungeon, an 8x8 dungeon, and that's it. That's all they'll ever know again because they pissed off the wrong people. And this is very real because just because God's source is all knowing and all powerful, that manifest beings are not. Manifest beings are stuck in mortal bodies that are equivalent to the dimension that they are in. Your mortal body in the fourth dimension will be able to levitate, fly under its own power. It will not need wings like the Elohim or what you think of as angels. But here, your mortal body is very fragile. You get cut easily, and you can't fly, and you can certainly drown really easy. And if you piss off the wrong people, you can find yourself in a terrible situation. And when you do, typically in any time matrix, in any level, you're carrying a handbook with you. Actually, it's 59 volumes wide, so it's a whole library, but it's the handbook of creation, of how to handle yourself while you're in manifest form. And it tells you clearly how to go about getting out of any situation if you really want to. And that means if you find yourself in prison and they've locked you up and thrown away the key, and this is not a being that's talking about 20 years. This is a being that's talking about 500 trillion years that you're going to be in this dungeon, and you don't want to face that, which you wouldn't at any cost. It doesn't matter what the cost is. Then you will go to your handbook and you'll find something called Bardo Return. And Bardo Return is how you can go about returning to the standing energy fields of God's source. And there's a couple of different ways to go back to God's source, but nothing as quick and easy as Bardo Return. And when you choose Bardo, you are choosing to let go of all your previous life history, which you could be 1 trillion years old by this time, or 1 billion years old. You might have lived hundreds of millions of times and did all kinds of fabulous things. You might have made some of those matrices yourself, all by yourself. That's your one matrix, or maybe you've got 10 of them. But the point is, you may have done some pretty fantastic things. You might be pretty proud of yourself, and you might not want to let go of all those memories. But if you go back through Bardo Return, it'll get you out of that jail cell, and it'll put you back into the standing energy fields of God's source, where you are collectively aware of all things again, and you're collectively powerful to no limit, okay? But you will not remember anything you did before, because your signature spirit essence must implode for you to do this. You have to lose your frequency that used to make you the particular character that you were, and that's a pretty hard thing for a lot of beings to consider doing. And that's why there's so many invader races, so many trillions of invaders that have been inside of these cosmeas and inside of this one-time matrix for hundreds and hundreds of millions of years, trying desperately to feed off of humans instead of just simply returning to God's source energy fields, and just give it up. And you think Thoth, I think is the correct pronunciation, as proud and lofty as Thoth was, he's going to give up all of his memories and his accomplishments? No, he's going to fight to the absolute bitter end. It's just like Marduk Satan, where you get the word Satan from. He's not giving up anything, So there's a couple of ways to return to God's source. That's one of them. And that's the pitfalls of taking your signature frequency of God's source awareness into manifestation. And there's a lot of beings, and I mean trillions and trillions of beings, that refuse to do it because they're scared to death they're going to lose their frequency, which is their character. It's their personality. That's, as far as they're concerned, that's who they are. And they're going to lose that if they go down into a time matrix that is too demanding and too dangerous for their level of understanding. And you've got to understand, every single one of these are at different levels of their ability and understanding. And let's just call it IQ. How smart are they going to be with that set of character flaws or features while they're in manifest form in this kind of time matrix? Those personalities out there are dispensing what I'm telling you is accurate. And when the ruiner tells you something, I know all kinds of those secrets already, that there's simply no way on God's green earth he's going to know those without actually being absolutely at the top of the Illuminati levels, which he is.
Yeah, he lives in Toronto, actually. This is where we are living and recording this part of the conversation of the Skype. But I haven't met him.
Simon Parks.
Simon Parks, yes. I love Simon Parks. He's a good guy.
And David Marshall, about the cloning rooms.
Donald Marshall.
Donald Marshall.
And that's right. Yeah.
You talk to the ruiner. The ruiner has said multiple times, he's telling you the truth, people. This is what we've been doing. This is real. And I know about clones, and I just didn't know about the cloning rooms, but I do know that the ruiner was able to answer a question from me that no one else would have been able to answer when I talked to him personally. And I asked him if the earth was it a sphere, and did it have a dome? And I already knew the answer because I knew it, because I've already been in touch with my contact about it, and I have absolute, a solid response on that. So I asked him, and he said, no, the earth is not a sphere. It's an oblate spheroid. He knew the exact word for what a pancake looks like in the Cosmeas. And he says, yes, I did see a dome when he was off planet. Those are both exactly right, by the way.
Yeah.
That's what the earth actually looks like, is a pancake, an oblate spheroid. And the dome was called, let me get you the actual name of the dome, because hell, why would I even have this name if I'm not going to, share it, right?
Right, exactly.
At least that's what I think. And I've got it in my notes here. It is called the, it's not actually called the firmament, but it's a hydrosuspension dome. Hydrosuspension. And the reason why it's there is to moderate the temperatures and the atmosphere of this planet. And it's created by hydrogen. And I can tell you all about that in another interview, maybe, but...
I think that would be needed, because like I said,
it's a complicated thing.
This is a 2-hour thing, and we can go on and on and on and on, which I think we're going to have to do. So this might be called Volume 1. In the meantime, Avalon, you're doing consulting, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm offering Skype consultations for people that want to ask me questions about the hidden secrets without having to be in public to do it, like on Facebook pages and having everybody, all their friends read their questions.
Exactly.
So the privacy issue is a big concern for some people. And another thing too, is I can download in 1 hour, 1 hour time, I can download a huge volume of answers that would take weeks or months
To type out.
for, the Facebook,
Yeah, exactly. I hear you, buddy.
kind of contact. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how do people contact you if they want a private Skype consultation with you?
They would contact me in private message on Facebook, and let me know. The profile is Avalon Sol. Sol is spelled SOL. And you private message me. You let me know that you'd like to have a meeting with me and ask me some questions.
Fantastic. Okay. And I think at this point we should call it an evening. It was a great evening of talk, and we're going to have to do this again because it's phenomenal. That's all I can say. Phenomenal. How about you, Charlie? What do you say?
Yeah, I'd like to say, actually, this little talk here was really a spiritual growth for even for me, and yeah, I highly recommend people communicate or message Avalon Soul, and to increase their knowledge and also that spiritual growth. I find when you meet somebody such as Avalon Soul, the knowledge just kind of how do you call it? You acquire it.
Yeah.
It's almost like we just got downloaded here.
Pretty much. Yeah, there was a lot of information going in and out there, which I appreciate immensely. A lot of it I've heard before. A lot of it I haven't. And wow, it was quite the evening, Avalon. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart to you. Right.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, absolutely. This is what we're doing here. I mean, this is what my contract was activated for, was to dispense this information to the evolution of the human angelic Christos, because this is it. This is the end of your long cycle, and you are going to another place very, very soon, and that can be one of two different places. We're here to see that you make it home, back to where you were intended to be. So that's the message.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good. Avalon, is there a picture of the model of an Earth that you could actually send us? The hydro suspension dome. Is there any kind of picture in the internet that kind of mimics what the Earth looks like?
Okay. I have found online photos of oblate spheroids in the shape of, a planet in space that is highly accurate to what that pancake shape would look like. But I haven't found one with an actual glass-like dome. You got to understand that it's not actually glass. It's actually ice, but the ice is called something different than ice in dimension, I was told, but I wasn't told what that word is. But still, I know that it is hydrogen depleted ice. And that is what stands between you and space. And that's what, NASA likes to call the toposphere. And when they fly their crafts through it, it turns the nose cones white hot or super red hot. Where's the friction coming from, boys? Where's the friction coming from in the toposphere? Answer that. I can absolutely answer that. I know exactly how it's working. So, yeah.
Wow. So that heat's internal. It's a spacecraft creating the heat. The heat up the water or the ice that has it's all hydrogen, right? Or hydrogen depleted or oxygen depleted?
It's hydrogen depleted ice crystals that form what is like ice, and so they have to break through it, and that is why every single every rocket, Every space shuttle that has ever entered into space has always hit the dome at a sharp angle. They never go straight up because they'll bounce right off of it.
And
They've got to
I
hit it at the
remember them talking
precise
about the
angle.
ice crystals all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to call it an evening. This was wonderful. Until next time, this would be Volume 1 of Avalon Sol, The Voice. And this was fantastic. Until next time, Avalon.
Okay. Goodbye, Avalon, and
Yeah, good night and all love.
All love, buddy. All love.